Hello, everybody. Good evening. I hope everybody's doing great. I am Maria Guajardo. As the screen says here, I will be hosting tonight's masterclass on overcoming the terror of the night. I want to first of all, before we begin, thank Tommy John for lending me his platform, his Facebook group for tonight, so that I could conduct this class and share with you guys on this subject. It's something that oddly enough, am passionate about only because it's been something that I have had to break through on, and the Lord has brought me through, and I've gained so much understanding around it. And I feel like this is something that's going to set other people free. And that's really my intention tonight, is that as I share with you guys, many of you are set free. So before we get started, if you're watching me live right now, go ahead and tag somebody on the comments, or if you invited a friend to the group to tonight's masterclass, tag them on the comments, let them know that we began. That way they don't miss any of this information. And um, so before we get started, a little bit about myself. If anybody who may not know me, hello Anna, hello Patricia, how y'all doing? So for those of you who may not know me, I'm Maria Guajardo. I'm from the Rio Grande Valley of Texas. I'm in the very southernmost part of Texas. And I'm a mother. I have two children. I've been married for 16 years, and I'm passionate about bringing the kingdom into the realm of family, into the spheres of family. And so that's a little bit about me. And I met Tommy John through the Dreams 222 Masterclass and the Exodus in the Supernatural online mentorship with Jennifer Eves, and we have been connected since then. I'm going on my third year of studying the subject of dreams with Jake Bullard in his Dreams 222 Masterclass, and I have learned so much about dreams in general, dream interpretation, and also about redeeming our nightmares. Oddly enough, one of the things that drew me into dreams was that I was experiencing a lot of nightmares, and I was also experiencing sleep paralysis. So, hello, Tammy. Hello, Jessica. Um, would you believe me if I told you that an estimated 50 to a whopping 80% of adults report having occasional nightmares, and up to 50% of children ages 3 to 6 have nightmares so severe that they wake up their parents? If you're a parent, you might have experienced that with your own children. But not only that, in addition to that, about 40% of the general population suffers, and I mean big words, all caps, suffers from sleep paralysis. And this is factual information, guys. And I think it's enough. We don't have to deal with this. So that's why I'm here tonight to share with you guys on the topic. So tonight we're going to be talking about um, overcoming the terrors of the night, nightmares, the paralysis, the things that keep us up at night, those things that are robbing us from our sleep. And I hope that by the end of tonight's class, you'll have some clarity on how you too can experience freedom in this area as I have, and that you have some information to either use for yourself or to take back to somebody that you love. I began to experience sleep paralysis in my early teens. I even remember that crazy dream, like vividly, the dream that I was having when the sleep paralysis kicked in, and it was something that I continued to struggle with up until recently. And I can't tell you guys like how much shame and condemnation it brought me as a Christian woman to be experiencing this until the Lord brought me through my breakthrough, which I'll be sharing with you guys today. So I'm gonna go ahead and share a screen with you guys to kind of just lead us through. I like slides and I like screens and I like this kind of stuff because it keeps times me, right? It keeps me on track. If not, I can go on forever. So let me go ahead and do that. Share. Oh, share screen. Share, da, da. All right. I got it right. Yeah. I thought I was going to mess it up. All righty, guys. So this is what we're going to be talking about today: overcoming the terrors of the night. Some of the things that you can experience to learn today is disarming sleep paralysis, angelic assistance, mindset shifts, our what our role is in spiritual warfare, and the importance of the renewing of our mind and coming into our identity, getting to know who God is, who we are, and what has been given to us. We're also going to cover strongholds. We're going to touch briefly on redeeming nightmares, and also the spiritual hygiene that we do during our nighttime, right? So, just to start with the sleep paralysis, a little history about it, and my own personal testimonial with sleep paralysis. Like I said, this began for me in my early teenage years, and it went on towards. I mean, it went on for up until recently, but there was a time when I was not walking with the Lord. I was doing other things. If you saw my testimony a couple of weeks back, I was playing around with new age witchcraft kind of stuff. And during that time, I continued to experience sleep paralysis, although it wasn't like as often as it got once I returned to the Lord. Once I returned to the Lord and I received the Holy Spirit, it was almost like it went crazy again, like something opened. And I spent a lot of time um, trying to figure out what it was, right? I spent a lot of time trying to research it, trying to find out like what was causing it, like what let it in, how I can stop it. And I want to tell you guys, don't make the same mistake that I did on spending so much time trying to figure out what it was. One day I was scrolling through the feed, and I ended up on the Excellence in the Supernatural Online Mentorship group, where someone had asked something about a spirit and like how to get rid of it. And I read this comment by our mentor Jennifer Eves, and she wrote, "It doesn't matter what it is, it has to go." And that clicked in me, and I'm like, "Whoa, I have been spending way too much time trying to figure out what this thing is and why it's been bothering me, that I have not realized my authority over it, and that it has to go." So, hey Tommy, hey. So I kind of like stopped focusing on it so much, and even as I began to take my classes with the master class, and I began to learn dream interpretation and the redemption of nightmares and the redemption of our night seasons and things like that, they began to taper off slowly, but and they were kind of like maybe once a year or maybe a couple times a year or whatever. But then this summer, I had I titled my summer the summer from hell. There was just a lot of things that were happening. My family and I separated from the church that we were going to, and then I started experiencing like other funny things around the house that I later concluded was literally there was astral projection into my house. And one of the mistakes that I made was that I didn't believe myself important enough to end up on a witch's radar, but I did. And it wasn't just me, it was several of us. And so I was trying to figure that out, but I was confusing it with the season that I was going through. I thought, well, I'm going through the season, we separated from our church, and I was starting to like condemn myself. And I feel like I gave it room again when I slipped into self condemnation and guilt and shame over, having been separated from my church. And so it began to like bother me again. So we're going to talk about that a little bit later about, our righteousness and all that. But um so this summer the sleep paralysis returned, and um I had some nights of all night sleep paralysis, battling with it. Like, and then it came to one week where it had been 3 nights in a row where it was just way too much. Like every time I tried, I mean, I was tired, guys. Every time I would try to fall asleep, bam, it would hit me, and bam, it would. I'm like, what is going on? So here's the thing: is that over the years, I grew strong enough where I could talk now. And at first, it was just like I could barely move and I could barely squeeze out the name of Jesus. And then it was full on like me, like speaking in tongues while sleep paralyzed. And then like me actually like cursing at this thing. So one night, the last night that it happened for me, I have been, of course, experiencing sleep paralysis, but I was so upset. Like it got to the point where it wasn't terrifying me anymore, but it was like, um it just made me angry. It like frustrated and made me angry. And I was yelling at it. And I can't remember. I was probably like, said a few explicits at it. I was just so upset, like, because I could talk, but I couldn't move my body. And I heard Holy Spirit. So when it stopped, and then I heard Holy Spirit ask me this question, and he asked me, "Why are you talking to it?" And I'm like, "Oh my gosh. You're right. Why am I wasting my time talking to it? Like, it's not gonna help me. It obviously is not gonna stop." So, I started thinking like, where does my help come from? And I knew in my knower, like I didn't see it with my eyes, or I saw it in my knower that there was an angel standing by my bedside. And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, so this angel's been standing there the whole time," and I'm trying to fight this thing in my own mind and my own power, and with words that it doesn't care about, right? And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, okay." So I drifted back into sleep, and boom, it happened again. But this time I managed, like, it was nastier. Like, this is the thing about this thing, this spirit, is that it doesn't relent, and it gets nastier as you get stronger against it. It growls, it takes all the light out in the room. It's just horrible. But this time I was like, oh, like really struggling to get out words. And I said to the angel, I said, "Help me." And as soon as I said that, boom, it lifted, it went. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what was that? Right. And I prayed, and I said, escort it out, like get it out of here, take it to wherever it is that they go. Right. I'm like, what? But I was trying to like process, like, what just happened? Like, has that angel always been there? Like, have I never recognized that it was that he was there, like, for me? Right. So that was I began to process this experience, and I thought, I need to know what this is, what it was, because I want this to become permanent, right? Like, I know my angel probably doesn't mind like sweeping in to rescue me every night, but I need to take charge of this atmosphere, or take charge of the situation with my authority and my power, that it doesn't keep happening, right? So I through all of this, when I began to process everything, I started looking back at my dreams. I take journals and notes of all my dreams, and I like note every experience. And when I was started putting everything together, I recognized that the thing that I was battling with, this sleep paralysis, wasn't what most people call an incubus or a succubus, or what most people call um I think those are the 2 common terms. Like, I just kept coming across that. Every research that I did, I kept coming across it, that that's what that was. But I knew that it wasn't that, because it wasn't manifesting some of the things that an incubus or succubuses are known for, which are like sleep, spirit spouses, right? So I'm like, why is it so adamant about just freezing me, right? What is it so adamant about just like stopping me, right? Like, just what is the deal? So after I put all my notes together, my journals, my dream, my experiences together, I came to realize that this was a manifestation of the spirit of fear, a manifestation of terror. And so I realized, like, oh my gosh, like, all this time, this is what I've been fighting with, right? This is what I've been like dealing with, is I was blaming the wrong thing, right? And, during that hunt that I went to figure out what it was, when I realized it doesn't even matter, right? Because it has to go. Um, I had been blaming that, and I was trying to put it together, but it never really made sense. But when I really got it, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, that's why I wasn't having this breakthrough, because I was blaming something else. You know what I mean? So anyway, moving on from that, one night in class, well, actually not one night, it was literally the following night that I had that experience. I was sitting in class with Ryan Pena. I'm a part of the SOK group, and School of Kingdom, with Dub Alexander and Ryan Pena. And he started class, and he was preaching all this stuff, and then he said, "Many of you are just one mindset shift away from your biggest breakthrough." And it hit me. the breakthrough that I'm looking for is in my mind. Like, it's I hold the key to this breakthrough in my mind. And so I started researching mindsets and strongholds and how to overcome them and all this information. And then that same night, when I went to sleep, and I said, it's not gonna happen again. So this time I took authority over it and I prayed different. I realized that I had been praying with fear because I was like so dreading that this thing was going to come again, that almost as if my prayer was putting a faith or an expectation on it showing up. And so that night it shifted where I began to decree and declare. And so I'm going to talk about what I decreed and declared for that as we go on. And also, as I was processing this, I came across this dream that I had had with my mentor, Dub. And this, I had this dream before I ever took the class, before I ever knew he had a class on it, all of that. Like, I had this dream before that, and he'd been trying to tell me, the Lord had been trying to tell me. And in this dream, we're looking together, we're standing side by side, and we're looking at second heaven. And he goes, "What are you doing here?" And I'm like, "Well, what do you mean? What am I doing here? I come here to war, right? Like, I'm a warrior." And I'm like, "That's what I do, right? I'm bad. Like, this is like spiritual warfare." And he was like, "But you don't belong here." And like, he started telling me in the dream, like, second heaven warfare is not for you. Like, that's not your place in warfare. Like, the Lord has the angelic for that, and there's angelic hosts for that. Like, and so when I started processing that dream, I realized I had the like the most wrong idea of warfare ever. And so we'll talk about that as we go on. So I want to talk a little bit about the terror now and kind of just break this down for you guys. And Psalm 91 became like my promise of protection that I kept going to and I kept going to. And I realized through that this is what that thing was, right? I dug into that word terror and all of the psalm really, but this is where the nitty gritty was at for me. That was so important for my mind to comprehend. Hello, Mary. Aloha. So Psalm 91 says, and I'm starting from, I think this is verse 4. Yeah, 4 through 11. It says, "He shall cover thee with his feathers, and under his wings shalt thou trust. His truth shall be thy shield and buckler. Thou shalt not be afraid for the terror by night, nor for the arrow that flieth by day, nor by the pestilence that walketh in darkness, nor for the destruction that wasteth at noonday. 1,000 shall fall at thy side, and 10,000 at thy right hand, but it shall not come nigh thee. Only with thine eyes shalt thou behold and see the reward of the wicked, because thou hast made the Lord, which is my refuge, even the Most High, thy habitation. There shall no evil befall thee, neither shall any plague come nigh thy dwelling. For he shall give his angels charge over thee to keep thee in all thy ways." Okay, so I first highlighted shall cover. So this is what shall cover means: is to hedge, fence about, shut in. And two, to block, overshadow, screen, to provide concealment and protection, to stop the approach, to shut off, to cover. Okay. And then the second word I highlighted there is truth, right? His truth shall be thy shield and buckler. A little while ago, I told you guys that I discovered that I had to fix my mindset and that I had some strongholds. A stronghold is a lie. A stronghold, a negative stronghold is a lie, but a positive stronghold, when we've made the Lord our stronghold, that stronghold is a stronghold of truth. And truth is descriptive of his nature. It means firm, faithful, sure, reliable, stable. And lastly, it means true doctrine. I had my doctrine so messed up. And so how many of you know that bad theology and false doctrine will mess you right up? I know that. I'm a witness to that. Okay, so then shield and buckler is another word I highlighted here for you guys so that you guys can understand. This was, man, this was, of all this thing, this was massive for me because I needed protection, and I'll talk about that a little later. But um literally, shield and buckler means surrounding. That is a kind of shield covering all over. One night when I was having these astral projection experiences, which, oh guys, I wish I could really, really get into that and really talk about that because it really just irked me. But anyway, one night while I was having that experience, I remember I just prayed from my heart and I asked the Lord to shield me, to protect me, to just surround me, and to just, and I think I said something like, because I had seen it in a dream before where we had like a dome over us that made us invisible. And so I asked him, can you be that dome over us that keeps us invisible to the enemy? So in the middle of the night, I heard a thum, like a, that's it. I heard a thum. I don't know how else to explain it. And I saw like a when a star goes out, like a, and it just went out. And I'm like, what was that? And then I saw in my mind's eye that dome, right? And I still had not, I didn't get it until I don't know why I searched. Yeah, no, I know why. Because I heard the Iron Dome, right? And Israel has an Iron Dome. I don't know if you guys remember a couple of years ago, they were experiencing some attacks from, I think, Pakistan. I can't remember what country it was. And every missile that they were sending over, every yeah, I should do a live on it sometimes. But every missile that the enemy was sending over was getting intercepted by this Iron Dome, and it was disarming it. And literally, the videos of this image is what I saw in the spirit, where it looks like a star goes out because it just disarms it. Man, you guys, I'm getting chills as I talk about it because this was so massive for me. It was like, that is who he is over us. He is that iron dome. He is that all surrounding shield that covers all of you. And if like, that is truth, right? That is truth. But a truth that we don't know doesn't really serve us, right? Because the enemy is banking on your lack of knowledge. And that's why he keeps at it, because you don't know something that could literally save you, right? So that was for me like, whoa, man, like this is, he's been telling me over and over because he showed it to me in the dream. He showed it to me that night. I came, like, he told me Iron Dome. I looked it up. That's it. Like, I received that. Yes, that's who you are to me. Right. And so I'm like, but still, what is this thing? Right. So terror is there in this context. It's the word pahad, and it's a dread or what causes the dread, right? So to dread is to fear greatly, be in extreme apprehension of, to be reluctant to do or meet or experience. And as a noun, a person or thing that is dreaded. Um, for me, the night became dreadful. I there were many nights where I was dreading the coming of night, right? So for me, the night was the terror, right? And so why does it come at night? And that is simple. It's because it is using the shadow of the night to hide. And I remember having a dream that went into it went from dream to an awake experience, which led me to understand that fear is a coward. It hides itself. It is afraid that you will spot it. And what you feel when you think you're afraid is actually fear manifesting upon itself. Your feeler, catch this, your feeler is feeling fear's nature. Okay, I had heard this before from Jake, our mentor, who heard it from, I believe, Dub. But it wasn't until I experienced it like this that I could understand what it meant. Like, you are feeling that thing. Like, so what you feel, it feels, and it's projecting it towards you, and you are feeling that. And like, if you're a feeler, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And so the whole thing was that I kept like blaming myself and saying that, thinking that I was the coward, that I was the one who lacked courage, that I was the one who wasn't bold. And really it was it that it been discovered, that it had been felt or discerned, and it like was manifesting upon itself, right? So um that night I had this crazy dream where like the Lord and I had gone hunting. We had gone up this tower and it was raining, and all of a sudden it went from uh it being in the dream to me being like having like a maybe like an open vision, and like I thought my eyes were open. It's so hard to explain, but there was like lightning in my room. I almost as if the storm was real in real life in my room. And all of a sudden it got dark. Like all the light went out. It was just dark. And I heard it growl. And I realized, oh my gosh, I'm paralyzed again. But I wasn't scared this time. Like I felt no fear. And I said, I don't know why. Guys, I don't know why I asked this or why I told it this, but this is what I said. I said, show me your face. And as soon as I said that, it fled. So that's where I got that revelation that fear is a coward, because it did not want to show me its face. And it showed all these other things hiding in the cover of darkness, but it would not show me its face. So I concluded he's a coward. The spirit of fear is a coward. Fear is scared. Um, moving on to the word, therefore he shall give his angels charge over thee. Always known this, always read it, never really comprehended it until I had the experience where the angel literally took me out of sleep paralysis. And so the word there, charge, is sava, which means to command, charge, give orders, so and so on, keep. So samar is also to preserve, to protect, to give heed, to observe, to guard, to keep watch and ward, to save lives. Where we then this is where we get the word watchman, samar. Many of you, I don't know if guys have heard a shamar prophet. That's a watchman prophet, right? And so and this had happened to me also before, where I had a crazy night of sleep paralysis and like crazy dreams, and I prayed to the Lord that it would be as if he was watching over me, because I was tired and I really wanted to get to sleep. And so when I finally did fall asleep, I dreamed that a prophet from the Esam group came and stood watch next to my bed. And so I realized at that point that, oh man, she's a watchman and she came to watch over me, and I had awesome sleep that night. So and then we have all, to keep thee in all thy ways. All means the whole of, like literally all of it. Like in all your ways. Like sometimes you think, man, well, I walked out of the protection of God, which is what I was feeling, what I was believing, because I had, left my church, right? And that's another thing that it used against me, that I was self-condemning. So I'm like, well, I guess all this stuff is happening to me, and this is just a terrible season because I went and I left my church, or I left my covering, and so I'm not walking in the protection of the Lord. Just mumbo jumbo that I don't know where I was in a few religious churches, so I think that's where I had picked up that belief, right? So, but here the promise is that he's going to keep thee in all thy ways, the whole of. So it's like it's not really conditional, right? And sometimes we put conditions on things that don't have any. And so thy ways means way, road, distance, journey, manner, path, direction, even habit, and way of course of life, or way of moral character. Guys, I don't know what else we need to cover here. In all thy ways, right? So this was like when I really began to dig into it and really understand it. It really gave me so much freedom. But if you read the entire Psalm 91, it is a promise of protection, and it is a deliverance uh, psalm. And some of the things, if you dig into the things that it promises, there's like so many demons in this psalm. But you know what? None of them can touch you. None of them have any single right to play with you, to torment you, to traumatize you, to rob your sleep. None of them, right? So as long as we understand that and we believe the promise of protection that is in this psalm, we're good. The problem was I read it, but I never really believed it. It never really sunk in. You know what I mean? And so I couldn't hold it up against the enemy when he tried me. But now I do. So that is it. And it's just such a wonderful psalm to really like, really meaty, to really like dig into it if you're ever interested. Um, so with the angelic host, I realized that there is sometimes we have a little bit of trouble accepting or believing that the angelic hosts are really to be relied on or called on or even asked help of. We're kind of like, yeah, we know there's angels. I mean, at least that's where it was, and it seems to be kind of a very popular belief that we don't talk to them, we don't engage with them, they're just out there, and God's already given them orders and they do whatever God said, and you kind of just like see them and, hey buddy, what's up, I know you're there, but let's not interact or nothing. But I found out that night that I very much did need to ask for help, otherwise it just stood there. Excuse me. So I'm like, and I took the help. I needed it. And so as I dug into this, I went into the verse Hebrews 1:14, and that verse says, are they not all ministering spirits sent forth to minister for those who will inherit salvation? So I broke that thing down, and I don't want to take all credit for it, because I also received a teaching on the angelic from my mentor. So like I was able to really like dig in here, and like I just felt like a lot more freedom that other people believed in it too. So to really study it. So just like for so that we understand that they are for like when we ask the angels for something, or when we release a command of some sort, for our safety or for the safety of our children, or just to help us along our day or in all our ways, right? We're not bossing angels around. We're not, like saying, oh, well, it's mine, I own it, I can tell it whatever. No, no, no. That's not at all what that means. But you do have a certain ability to partner with them, because they're assigned to you and their purpose is your purpose, right? And they're assigned to you, and the purpose of their purpose, which is your purpose, is that you reach your destiny, right? That um you get to fulfill that thing that it was that God put you in this world to do, right? So to break this word down a little, ministering is the word liturgicos, and it's Strong's G3010, and it means relating to the performance of service employed in ministering. So that first word, are they not all ministering? Are they not all relating to the performance of service employed in ministering? Spirits sent forth, and the word there sent forth is apostello. This is G6 Strong's G649, and which means to order one to go to a place appointed, right? We're going to break it down. We're going to put it all together in a little bit. And so then the last word, minister, is not the same as the first word, ministering. This one is diaconia, which is Strong's G1248, which means service, ministering, executing the commands of others. So if we read this, oh, let me go back. Let me reread it. Okay, so we reread this with this definition with the Greek, and expand on it. This is how it reads: are they not all employed in the performance of service, ordered to go to an appointed place to execute commands for those who will inherit salvation? The answer to that is yes, right? It's a rhetorical question, but that's it, guys. That's when you perceive that you have an angel, which we all do, right? But when you perceive the presence of your angel, or when you're in need, or when you need partnership of some sort, you can, right? You can ask, right? When we declare and we decree, who's carrying out these decrees? Like they are, right? Because when you decree, you declare, you decree, you're declaring and decreeing truths. You're doing this as an alignment, a partnership with the will of God, with things that God has already said, right? So when you sound like him, they naturally obey, right? Because that's right on. That's a can do, right? So I don't think I haven't studied this deep, but I don't know. I don't believe that we can decrease something that's maybe illegal in the kingdom and they would still do it. I don't think that they would, right? That's just, just me trying to use my logic here about that. But anyway, let's see in some areas. And this was so interesting to me too when I was started digging into this. Amen, Mary. There you go. So here, oh, what did I do? Uh oh yeah, because at the screen, oh, I'll just make it big. Angelic partnering with us, and these are some examples in the Old Testament, is Elijah, 2 Kings 6:15 through 18. And then that's the story of I misspelled Elijah. It's Elisha. It's Elisha, sorry. Oh, it's getting on me like it's one of those things like I wish I could go fix it right now. But anyway, we're gonna ignore it. So Elisha prayed that the eyes of his servants would be open so that he would see that there was more for them than there was against them. I think many of us are familiar with that event, right? But as you keep reading, when the attack breaks out, he prays that the Lord would blind them, right? Would blind the attackers, and the Lord blinds them according to Elisha's prayer. And so they don't get blinded and then immediately when it's all over they see again. No, actually what happens then is that Elijah leads them to, I believe, Samaria. So he leads a great army that is blinded, can't see, or can't see, all the way to Samaria, right? How does he do that if not with the angelic intervention and help that was there for them, right? Then it says that when he arrived to Samaria and he brought them into the presence of the king, he asked the Lord that he would open up their eyes again. And the Lord opened up their eyes again, and then they could see. Could you imagine trying to lead a great army that knows the terrain somewhere not where where you told them that you were taking them, if they were, you know what I mean, if they were blinded, but still one man like leading all these people, it just doesn't make sense until you take into account that he had angelic help, right? And so, and he asked for it, like he said, like, Lord, blind these people. How is that going to happen, right? Like how if not through the angelic, right? Anyway, so that's was like, well, what? And so in scripture, in the New Testament, Joseph, Mary's husband, who was the father of Jesus in this scenario, I guess, because I don't want you guys to think that I'm talking about Joseph, the manifold coat Joseph. No, no, no. I'm talking about Joseph, New Testament. So he received so much, he interacted with the angelic so much to save baby Jesus, right? Like the angelic came to him in dreams, it came to him in visions, and it told him, like, go here, go there, stay there, don't do this, don't. And that was partnership, guys. Like, I mean, I don't know how else to explain that. So another thing that I feel it gives us permission to interact with the angelic the way that Jesus acted with the angelic is that, well, Jesus interacted with the angelic, right? So scripture also says that as he is in this world, so am I, right? So as Jesus is, not as Jesus was, but as or so I will be. No, right now, in this present moment, as Jesus is in this world, um, who was and is and always will be, right? The beginning, the middle, and the end, like the eternal, right? As he is in this world, so are you. So that how if we can find it in scripture how Jesus interacted with the angelic, I feel like we can interact with the angelic as well. And sometimes we fear that we're going to end up in the worshiping of angels. Not possible if it's an angel of light, like angel of lights, right? If it's an angel, a true angel sent by God, right? We see in Revelation where John tries to worship the angel, and the angel tells him, "No, no, don't do that. I'm one. I'm just like you, sent on this mission to testify of the future events of Jesus. Worship God." So an angel's not gonna an angel that's really sent by God is not gonna let you worship him. Like I've had an experience where it didn't even let me talk, much less worship him. Like, and this was like, I processed this later. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I forgot about that. But this was like in 2020 where I had an angelic visitation into my hotel room, and I was so afraid of it that I was going to rebuke it, but I couldn't even like, because and you see this in scripture as well, like people become terrified when they see an angel, like they just like fall or whatever. But I got so scared of it and I was about to rebuke it, and it didn't even let me talk. It put me out, and I was asleep till the next morning, and then I'm like, whoa, what happened? So anyway, and I still don't know. I still haven't processed that. I still don't know what happened. Um, Alrighty then, here we go. Next. So, what is our role in spiritual warfare? So, remember how I told you earlier that I had that dream where my mentor told me, like, hey, you're not supposed to be out here. Like, this is not for you, right? I had a massive like revelation on that when I realized what he had been trying to tell me. For many months, I had been dreaming. Uh, what was it? I think it's Psalm 24:7. I can't remember where it says, lift up your heads, O ye gates, that the King of glory may come in. Who is the King of glory? Right? Like that. And so the name of God that is mentioned in that psalm is Jehovah Sabaoth. And I kept dreaming that. I kept hearing that. And then I kept like dreaming a person's whose name means God of war. And so I'm like, what is God trying to tell me? And so I realized that he was trying to tell me that he is the commander of the Lord of hosts, right? And like he was trying to make that distinction that he has an army, right? And I don't know why I was always trying to like do warfare in this way that I guess I just didn't comprehend. Like I always felt like it was me. Like I had to like be like intense in prayer and all this stuff to do like war. And I was the one that had to had all my ducks in a row. And I was the one that had to have the strategy and all this stuff figured out so that, I could be safe. When in reality, that was not my place. Was just to pray in agreement, right, with what he's doing in his will. And so that having that mindset and the wrong mindset about spiritual warfare, I think was also what was kicking my butt. Uh, so, and this is like a very, this is going to be really strong and maybe it's not easy to receive by so many people, but I accepted it and I received it. It's up to you if you receive it or you accept it, but we are not God's army. We are not. God has an army already, and that's the angelic host. The angelic hosts are the military of the kingdom. We are like the executive branch, right? Like, and I love the way that Dub Alexander explains it. If you ever get a chance to like go look him up and find his teaching on angels, but um, God already has it. God has titled us so many other things. God has given us so many other things. Like he's given us a title. He has adopted us, right? He's brought us into adoption. He's given us the title of sons and daughters, of kings and queens, and fathers and mothers in the kingdom. And like he's given us all like all so much that we don't have to fight, right? When Jesus breathed this last, he said it is finished, right? And so many of us think it has begun. And I think that happens because sometimes we get brought into the kingdom um, the wrong way, right? Through fear. And I was brought into the kingdom through fear the very first time I came, and I wound up in a religious church that really did a lot of fear-based preaching. And then, when I went away, returned to the Lord, I wound up kind of in the same pattern again, and same thing: a lot of shame, a lot of condemnation, a lot of fear of hell, and like that kind of stuff. And so it sets you up on a path of warfare. It sets you up on a path of like I don't know how else to explain it, but it just sets you up in this ugly path where you feel like you're always striving, you're always working, you're always reaching, you're always like going from battle to battle. And Peter says, after you have suffered for a little while, right? So it's like, I'm not saying that we're not meant to suffer or that we're not going to suffer, but the suffering is for a little while. And then Paul says that we will go from glory to glory with us with unveiled faces, right? Um, we'll go from glory to glory. I need to find that verse and like read it to you completely, but I don't know, man. I feel like I'd rather be going from glory to glory than from battle to battle, and like to suffer forever. So this really was a big deal for me, right? What happens is like I did a little podcast on this too, on identity, right? Where what we call ourselves and how our names and our titles and things like that, sometimes they give us identity. And so if we are calling ourselves the army of God, if we're calling ourselves like the warrior, if we're calling ourselves the soldier, we give ourselves that role, right? And so we unbeknowingly put ourselves in the ranks of angels, and we can't keep up, guys. It's just, that's not what we're meant for. That's not what we were created for. So I hope that makes sense. Obviously, digest it, take decide if this is something that you believe or not. But that's just what I've come to the conclusion on. My role in intercession and warfare is partnership, right? I go when something happens, a situation arises, even if it's through dreams or even wherever it is. I don't go straight ahead directly into like boom battle mode, right? Because I need to get some orders first. I need to get some things clear, and it's like that's the thing about intercession is partnering with what God has said about the situation. What is the will of God in this area? What is the will of God in this situation? And then that's where we come in, and that's it gets, I'm not gonna say easier because that even doesn't, like, even that I have struggled believing, but it's less laborious when we are praying and partnering with God, right? Because we got it. Like we're on track, we're tracking. And it's the same thing with warfare. So um I don't know how to explain this. I don't know. I hope that makes sense, right? We partner. We partner with the Lord in intercession and in warfare so that we can see the result that we are praying for, because we know what God has said, right? And that's what we fight for. Amen. You're shooting for an aim when you partner with God. That's right. Let me show that. Right. So you know your target, you know what it is that you're praying for, you know what it is that God has willed over the situation. And it just, man, you declare and you decree that thing, and then parts start to move. But when you're not quite hitting it, like you're like, what? I've been praying for this for months. Like, what's going on? Is it just there's a little tweak you got to make, right? Or maybe there's just a little something that you go back to the Lord on that and hear him right. And I learned this also through prophetic processing, right? When we partner with our prophetic words and we start praying those things through, like once we break them down and we start to understand, the will of God for your life or for the situation or for the season, we start to pray those things and we can break through. So um here we go. Also, Psalm 103:20, and I thought this was so big. Like, it says, so it's like, well, how does that happen, right? Like, how does the atmosphere know that I'm saying God's will? Because it knows, right? It's like sometimes creation just gets it. All right. And it's like, how does the angelic know? Okay, it's time to go. It's time to move. Right. Like this is it. Like she hit it right. It's like Psalm 103 says it right. Not only do you where is it? It says, "Bless the Lord, you his angels, you mighty ones who do his commandments, obeying the voice of his word. Bless the Lord, all you his hosts, you who serve him and do his will." So they're obeying, who do his commandments, obeying the voice of his word. So not only do you have the breath of God in you, which inhales, excels, and inhales, like it goes out through your voice, but also when you speak like Him, that is to speak His will, to speak His promises, you sound like Him, right? That's partnership, which leads into what I'm going to talk about next, decrees and declarations, right? Um, a declaration is so declare is the translation of a variety of Hebrew and Greek words in the Old Testament and the New Testament, appearing to bear uniformly the meaning to make known, to set forth. And then we have decrees, right? Decree is to command, defined as a formal and authoritative order having the force of law, a judicial decision or order. So I think when I was researching this, I thought this was funny because the Blue Letter Bible and even like I have the logo software, like I couldn't like drill into decrees, right? I'm like, well, you gave me a big old explanation about declarations, but didn't really break down decrees for me. So I had to go find it, like, the actual definition in the Merriam-Webster's, right, of what a decree was. So a decree is to command, is defined as a formal and authoritative order having the force of law, a judicial decision or order. So to me, I thought it was funny that the Blue Letter Bible app did not have, the Strongs or the breakdown of this. So they didn't even have to articulate what the word decree means or expound on command. And it's almost as if it was a total given, that people of those days understood that they had the authority to issue decrees, right? And I don't know why in our culture we have such a hard time accepting that this is what we have been given, right? Like we are just so scared of messing it up and saying the wrong thing. And it's like, oh, because that's where I was. I'm like, I don't want to declare and decree because I don't, what if I mess it up or I say it wrong? You know what? Take comfort in this, and that Jesus Christ is the perfect intercessor. So before it gets up there, he is fixing what we what we messed up, right? The posture of our heart is right. Sometimes we say some prayers that just like, whoa, that was the most terrible, worst prayer ever. And somehow it still happened. Like the mercy of God is just so infinite, right? It's like, I get what you're saying, right? I get where your heart is at. And I know, right? So when all that comes together, it's like we need to not worry so much about, us issuing commands because, like I said earlier, or in Psalm 103 says, they take heed right to the word of his voice, right? So it's like if what you're saying doesn't sound like God, doesn't sound like God's will, it's not going to happen. Like they're just not going to move on it, right? And so I hope that makes sense. So moving on from that, into the renewing of the mind, man, this was such a big deal for me. I realized, that I'd been in the kingdom, that I'd gone to church, and that I've made so many friends, and I've gone to so many Bible studies, and I've all, read the Bible and all this stuff, and I still was not sure who God was, right? As until I really started getting into some really anointed teaching, and like they began to break it really good and down for me that I got it. Like it was things that you've heard so many times over and over again, and then just one day it sinks, right? So in the renewing of our mind, it's important that we have some things straight, right? And that is one of those things is who is God, right? So we begin with the baseline of who is God. He is a loving, kind, heavenly Father who is also the king of the universe, and your father is the king, and the king is your father, right? It's like, whoa. If we've read the story of the prodigal son and we really spend time on it, and we come to realize the father in that story, right? Like he was lavish, and he lavished his son when his son came home. And he didn't just say, oh yeah, meet him halfway, say hello, dressed him, give him his robe, his shoes, his ring, and say, all right, well, I'll see you around. No, he brought him all the way in, and he threw him a party, right? So it's like he is a good, loving, kind heavenly father who is also a king, right? And so what does that mean to you, that the king is your father? Is that you have an inheritance, right? So we need to get straight who we are, right? Who am I? So in the process of the renewal of the mind, we need to understand, who am I? Who are you? Right? You are a son, you are a king, you're a father, right? As a son, you've inherited the kingdom. As a king, you are ruling, you are taking domain, you're taking territory, you are doing what God told Adam and Eve to do in the garden, right? Which is like to have dominion, right? And as a father, you are creating other kings, you are creating other sons, you are making these disciples, right? And for us women, we're daughters, we're queens, we're mothers, same thing, but just as women, you know what I mean? And then also important to note is that um we're citizens, like Paul talks about it, right? We're citizens, we're ambassadors, and we're diplomats. As citizens, we have rights. As ambassadors, we have responsibilities. As diplomats, we have authorship. So once we move into that place of diplomat, that means that we have authorship, and we have within our hands and within our means the ability to change a nation, right? To change the world, to change things, to make the governments of this world appear like the governments of our God. Amen. So then, what have I been given, right? That's also important in the process of the renewal of the mind. Is as well, I just said that, right? As a citizen, right? As an ambassador, responsibilities, and as a diplomat, authorship, right? As a son, a kingdom; as a king, a place to rule; and as a father, the responsibility over making disciples and making sons, making kings that are not orphans, because I've come across some orphan kings, and let me tell you, they will shut you down. The orphan mindset is just so terrible for it to be operating and ruling over someone who is in a place of authority. It's awful. So I'm not going to get into that. Let's move on. So, what are strongholds? Right. So that's also important, because this was something that I really have to hammer down. And it sounds extraneous, but it's really not. I'll talk about that. So a stronghold is a castle, a stronghold, a fortress, fastness, something that you can trust on to have refuge and be safe in. Um, but anything, it's also another meaning of the word stronghold, is anything on which one relies, or of the arguments and reasonings by which a disputant endeavors to fortify his opinion and defend it against his opponent. So 2 Corinthians 10, 3-6 says, for though we walk in the flesh, we are not waging war according to the flesh. For the weapons of our warfare are not of the flesh, but have divine power to destroy strongholds. We destroy arguments and every lofty opinion raised against the knowledge of God, and take every thought captive to obey Christ, being ready to punish every disobedience when your obedience is complete. So, a stronghold is pretty much a lie that has set itself up against you and has fortified itself in your mind, right? And it's like, um, so here's an example, because I could like talk about it forever, but for us to get it, an example of a stronghold that is a lie, a negative stronghold, is when you tell yourself something happens to you, right? Like, you're having a terrible week, or even you're experiencing nightmares, or you're experiencing sleep paralysis, or you're having like, just terrible visions or whatever, right? You start to tell yourself, well, this is happening to me because I must have done something wrong, or I must be doing something that doesn't please God. That's an example of a stronghold that is a lie. But a stronghold that is a stronghold of truth is, I am the righteousness of God in Christ Jesus, and my Father is loving, my Father is kind and gracious, and he's merciful, and he doesn't punish me for my mistakes. He lovingly corrects me. So that's the truth, right? So let me just get a little, I don't want to miss this note. So we don't overcome strongholds by changing what we do, or what we don't do, or how we behave, but overcoming stronghold is an inside job, which happens through the renewal of our mind. So the way that we think will influence our behavior. And I like the way that my mentor Ryan Pena says this. He says, we don't have a sin problem, we have an identity problem. So when we don't know who we are, we believe these lies and we continue to operate um, behaviorally in sinful ways, right? Because we don't know who we are. So the way that we cast down a stronghold, that we bring down a stronghold, is not by spending all of our efforts in tearing down what is the lie, but erecting what is the truth. It's learning the truth, believing the truth, consuming the truth, letting the truth take hold inside of us. So that way, every time that a lie rises up against it, or throws itself against it and tries to challenge the stronghold of truth, the stronghold of truth holds itself uh, firmly against it, and the lie falls, right? Because you've erected truth. And anything that is built on a foundation of lies will not stand the test of time, is weak, and it cannot stand up to the truth, which is strong, right? So another thing that I've learned through the study of strongholds is, like, it's kind of like an art of war, right? Like actual war. It's like whenever the enemy has set up a stronghold against you, they're going to find the place that is the safest for them, where they can run their whole operation, where they can hide and not be seen by you or identified by you, and they start to run your whole life, right? And so the way that we kill it, that we dwindle it down, we take away its power, we take away its control and its authority, is that we starve it. We essentially set up a siege against it, so that no water, no communication, everything that it needs to survive cannot come in, right? So what does that look like practically? So practically, that looks like us spending everything that we were doing and throwing to that lie, everything that we were doing to defend that lie and to hide behind that lie, and that, or even that lie was doing to us, we start putting all those efforts and all that energy towards erecting the truth, right? So now it's your time, your attention, your devotion is not going towards that thing that was the lie, but it's going towards the truth. So with that being said, it's so important that we know what we're listening to, what we're studying, what we're reading, what we're watching, right? What is feeding our spirit? Like sometimes we passively listen to YouTube, or we passively listen to podcasts, and we unknowingly start believing some of the things that they're saying without really like taking like into consideration that this might be an opinion, this might not be the truth, right? Or this might be someone that's processing through their own experience, and might not be what's true for me, right? Like, so we start to, that lie begins to get fortified because you believe something, and the truth gets starved, right? So instead we start feeding the truth, and all of our efforts that used to go to the lie, they die. The lie was weak to begin with, begins to dwindle, and now you've erected truth, and that truth stand, right? So I hope that makes sense to you guys. It's one of the things that's my biggest pet peeves is when like YouTube channels, or even TikTok channels, Instagram accounts, da da da, like when they dedicate so much time talking about the demonic. And the crazy part is that they have millions of followers and millions of views, and they're getting paid for this, and we consume it. Like, we're the ones watching it, we're the ones sharing it, we're the ones giving it attention. And meanwhile, there are so many teachers and so many people that are teaching truth, that are teaching identity, that are talking about the love of God, which don't ever underestimate the power of the love of God, right? Like, it is so massive. Like, if we can get a true understanding of the love of God, it's like, my gosh, it's like, it's everything. You know what I mean? There's comments coming through that are Facebook users, so I can't tell like who is commenting, but thank you guys so much for interacting in the feed. And like, I really truly appreciate that you guys are still here with me, because we're going on an hour and 5 minutes and I'm still not done. So what this was so amazing, also by Ryan Pena. I'm telling you guys, like, these guys, my mentors and teachers, have been so heaven sent. especially during this last season, through everything that I was experiencing. One of his quotes is, "The greatest warfare you'll ever face is not against the enemy, but rather in the unrenewed areas of your thinking." So, what is the relationship between a stronghold and the spirit of fear? Right. So, the spirit of fear has set itself up in the stronghold of lies relating to God's perfect love. So, 1 John 4:18 says, "There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear, because fear involves torment. But he who fears has not been made perfect in love." So, I I don't have time to like go through all the experiences, because it's like I've been here forever, but I realized through a lot of inner healing and deliverance that I had been self-protecting. So through that realization, I was my own protector, right? Hence why I was getting my butt kicked, right? Because I just, you know what I mean? God is my protector, right? And I need to trust that He's my protector, and that He loves me so much that He's not going to let me be hurt, right? And I still was trying to protect myself. So after, like, this was so crazy, because after my last inner healing session that I had, um, when that was revealed to me that I had been self-protecting, I had an experience with love that I will never forget. I was asleep and I woke up from the middle of my sleep and I felt a hug. Like, and I know it was Jesus. I felt this hug, and I felt a type of love that I have never, ever, ever felt before. And guys, I'm married, been married for 16 years. I have 2 kids who love me, always run up to me and hug me, and like they don't hold back on the love. But what I felt with this hug, I can only describe as the love of God. It's different from any love you'll ever experience in this world from another human being. It's like I just melted into it. I just like all of my walls came down, like after that inner healing session, like whatever was left, like he just came in and just like dropped it all, right? And so I understood, that fear had been having its way on me because I had not completely understood. I had not yet been made perfect in love. And no shame and no condemnation if this is something that we face or is something that we have not comprehended yet. But I pray today that it's something that you come into the full comprehension of, that you get to feel that perfect love of God that just casts out all fear, right? So, some indications that you may be experiencing a stronghold of fear is, first of all, torment, which is severe physical or mental suffering, crippling to the mind and to the body. Yeah, I don't want to lose my notes here again. Da, da, da. Well, so what is torment? So I had written down the definition of torment because it was like, uh fear is an emotion that okay. So fear is an emotion that feels like the anticipation of a danger or pain to come. So it's like a pending doom, which I talked about earlier, which I used to feel like every time that this would happen, which evokes either the freeze, flight, fight, or faint response. And I personally feel that the freeze characteristic of fear is this is my own opinion, is what the spirit of fear is manifesting during sleep paralysis, because it wants to terrify you to the point that you do nothing. And have you have you ever heard of analysis paralysis? And that's also fear. It's fear of getting it wrong. So I'm like, oh, I started putting that together. It's like, oh, analysis paralysis, it's fear because you don't want to get it wrong. And so fear has 4 stages or 4 different manifestations: freeze, flight, faint, or fight, right? So anyway, I feel like the manifestation of fear that I'm sensing whenever I fall under sleep, whenever I would fall under sleep paralysis, was the freeze response. So torment means severe physical or mental suffering, crippling to the body, and to the mind. And that also, crippling sounds like sleep paralysis and anxiety to me. And so there's also the fear of death, and that is also very common. And it's called thanatophobia, and it's an intense fear of death or the dying process, and it produces anxiety over your own death or the death of someone that you care about. And I used to have an unreasonable fear. So when I began to study this in processes, I realized that I had given fear uh way too many open doors and opportunities to come at me, right? Because I used to have an unreasonable fear that my children would die in their sleep. Like I literally slept, and I hardly slept, and I would check on them multiple times a night. And then when they were old enough to go to school and like leave my side, I would get random thoughts in my head that someone was going to take them, that someone was going to hurt them, or something would happen at school where like I would never see them again. And it's like, I don't know, it was like this anxiety that I let run my life during my kids like younger years for way too long. And so yeah, that's true, Anna. And so then also tensions, right? Stress, worry, agitation. So stress is mental strain. Worry is what gives way to anxiety or unease, is to allow one's mind to dwell on difficulties or troubles. And agitation is the action of arousing public concern about an issue and pressing for action on it. So this last one is wow, because it's like the beginning stages of a panic attack where you get real antsy and everyone can tell that you're about to lose it and you start getting real bossy and real demanding. I was like this. People couldn't stand being around me when I was like in this stage, and I didn't even realize that I was doing it. I was just bothering the junk out of everybody, right? Because I was in this like antsy, like agitated state, right? Where like, I mean, people would have to like talk me down. My husband would talk me down or have to like, but I didn't realize, here's the thing, is that all this was happening and I didn't realize that that's what it was, or that that's what I was experiencing. And so, like I said, I had given fear way too many opportunities to come at me and I didn't even know. So what? My people perish for a lack of knowledge, right? So then there's a fright, which is a sudden, intense feeling of fear. Um, Fearfulness and trembling have come upon me, says Psalm 55:5. Fearfulness and trembling have come upon me, and horror has overwhelmed me. Horror is an intense feeling of fear, shock, or disgust. And overwhelmed is crazy because I know I felt this before, is bury or drown beneath a huge mass, beat that is too strong or too powerful, and it overpowers. So um a lot of times it wasn't sleep paralysis that I would feel. It was just I would feel that like there was like this big like rock like laying on me and I just was stuck under it. And I used to dream that too. So it's like, oh, when I like really I saw this, I'm like, oh my gosh, right? Like this is what it was. And then there's finally there's the fear of people, which is very common, right? Um Proverbs 29:5 says, those who flatter their neighbors are spreading nets for their feet. So, a fear of people causes a snare and entrapment. There are there's two opposing ends to the spectrum, because on one end, it can manifest as perfectionism and performance to obtain acceptance or approval, and on the other end, it can manifest as hiding from people who you've identified as holding power and authority. And I've experienced both. And it also manifests as timidity. Ironically, I've never been timid, but I have experienced where, and this came out through inner healing as well, where I was self preserving by hiding from people who I had subconsciously identified might have power or authority. And, that's just, through inner healing and things that I had, to renew within me, right? And thank the Lord that's been taken care of. But and we could go on and on about this. But lastly, we have nightmares, which is a generalized term for frightening dreams. So nightmares is it originated. The word originated from the Old English or the Middle English word. Oh my gosh, my tongue. It originated from the Middle English word mare, which is meant a female evil spirit thought to lie upon and suffocate sleepers. The prefix night was added later on to emphasize that these demons came at night. right? But now, as time has gone on, as the years have gone on, it's become a very generalized word to describe frightening dreams. And so, I grew up believing that there was a demon that was actually speaking to me in the middle of the night and giving me these nightmares. And I coming to realize now it's it was a legend or whatever. I believe that was around for a very long time. And I want to interject here and say something. I don't know if there's any Latino people here listening to me tonight. I suspect that there might be. But one thing that also, because this began to happen to me as a child, as a teen, right? The sleep paralysis part, and I realized that when we were kids, yes, Anna, amen. I realized that as a kid, my parents and my aunts and my grandparents used to frighten us into sleep. What? Yes, Mexican folk do that, especially back then. I don't know how they do it now, but back then they used to say, if you don't go to sleep, La Llorona is going to come get you. Or they used to say, if you don't go to sleep, the Mano Pachona is going to come. Or if you would get up during the night, and I don't know if you guys relate to this, Anna, and I think maybe Patricia, right? If you guys keep getting up during the night, the mano patrona is going to reach you from under the feet, right? Which is another legend, right? And the llorona is another legend. It's just a woman that if you live by the water, like she appears because she drowned her children in the water, and she's trying to take children because she's trying to replace her own children. That's just a very broad explanation of that. And they used to literally frighten us with those things. And then they wondered why we couldn't sleep through the night, why we were scared, why we were having nightmares, like why I was having sleep paralysis. Well, because you was frightened me to sleep. You know what I mean? Like, y'all, don't do that. I know I'm talking to people who are bright and who are smart and who follow the Lord. And I know you guys can do that with your kids. But if if this ever happened to you as a child and you're struggling with this right now, cancel all those words in the name of Jesus, because my parents and grandparents used to torment me with that. And I realized way later on the effects of it over my life. Right. So here we go. Um, so interpreting our nightmares. So finally we get to a place where I think I'm a little bit more comfortable with, but interpreting our nightmares. I used to I made a live, or Tommy John had me on a live months ago about redeeming through, I think this is back in May, interpreting through the lens of love. So if you guys take a look at my podcast, oh, I don't know why it doesn't go. It doesn't want to follow it. But anyway, if you want to take a look at my podcast is My Supernatural Vida. You can find it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Podbean, and YouTube. And then this video on interpreting through the lens of love is somewhere also in the video section of the group, Grace to Grow in the Prophetic. If you want more detail about it, that's the place to go. But just a very broad overview here, and this is something that my mentor Jake Bullard imparted on me, and so I like share it in the way that I can best can. But really, he carries his message so well, and he's actually doing right now a a group, a class on redeeming nightmares, I think it's called. And so if you want, and his replays are up, if you want to dive deeper into that area, I would recommend that you look him up on Dreams 222. But just very like just talking about this kind of generally. So redemption, so that we understand what redemption means, is a releasing effected by payment of ransom. Redemption, deliverance, liberation produced by the payment of ransom, right? So when Jesus Christ uh, gave his life on the cross and bled out for us, right? That we may be delivered. Well, delivered from what? Well, we're delivered from the system of darkness. So we no longer belong to the system of darkness. Now we have been brought into the kingdom of light. And so we have been redeemed. All of us has been redeemed, not just a portion of us, right? Our body, our soul, and our spirit has been totally redeemed, right? And when we're dreaming spirit to spirit, right? Because dreams that come from God are prophetic dreams, and God is speaking into our spirit. And so all that to say is that dreams are God's communication with us, right? And it's prophecy. But nightmares, what I believe nightmares are the enemy's false prophecy and an attempt to get our agreement so that he could derail us, right? Derail our lives or get into an agreement so he can take us into, outside of the plan of God for our lives, right? So my advice to you in this area is that whenever you have a nightmare, whenever or a child or one of your children has a nightmare, we must resist the urge to prophesy the enemy's plans for their lives or our lives or anyone's life, because that's what a nightmare is. So a lot of times we see the nightmare and we see things that are very obvious on it, and we're like, well, you have this issue, you have that issue, and like this and that's going to happen. And well, really, if it was a nightmare, was terrifying, we are experiencing the enemy's prophecy for us over our life. So we don't want to speak that, right? We have to understand that our words are powerful. We have to understand that our prophetic words move things, right? And so and they have the power to bring people into agreement, right? So if people agree with the prophetic word that we give them, that's really us just interpreting the enemy's plans for them, and they get afraid or they believe it and they start agreeing with it, well, we've just derailed this person on a season or, temporarily or for life. We don't know, right? So whenever somebody has a nightmare, the best thing to do is to just chill out for a little bit, read it, process it. And now like, okay, so the enemy has these plans for so and so's life, right? That's not God. Those are not God's plans for, let's say, these are not God's plans for Anna, right? God has better plans for Anna. So when I have this nightmare before me, a couple of routes that I take, or that those of us who are under Jake's mentorship, is that um, we start to kind of draw out, like, okay, so what does the enemy know about this person that he's terrified about, and he wants to derail him from, like, really the most that he can do, because he's not a creator, is just to pervert God's plans. So he has insight on something that you don't have insight on yet, and he's trying to like pervert it or to misuse it or to take you away from it. So it's like, what is that thing that he's keeping from me, or that he's trying to keep me from, or he's trying to scare me before I get there so I don't actually do it, right? And so that, in that sense also, it's important that we tap into our prophetic side and we start asking the Lord, what do you have to say about this? What are you saying about the season? What are you saying about this person's lives, or my life, or whatever this dream is, right? And God is so good and he is so faithful that when you ask him, he'll answer. And so the more you do it, the easier it gets, right? And so we resist that, right? Because a lot of times what nightmares do is they put this kind of sense of urgency over us that we feel like we have to understand right now and get it right now. And so we maybe speak too soon or release something too soon, and so we miss it, right? And we end up prophesying the enemy's plan. So we're not mouthpieces for the enemy, right? We're mouthpieces for God, and we speak what God says, right? And not what the enemy is saying. And so in this area specifically, also, it's important that because it is prophetic, um, that we follow the rules of the prophetic, which are, laid out on 1 Corinthians 14:3. It's but he who prophesies speaks edification and exhortation and comfort to men. So one of the things that my mentor says is, like, before you release a word, put a hand over yourself and speak that word to yourself. Does it feel good, right? Does it feel like it edifies you? Does it feel like it exhorts you or comforts you? And if the answer is no to any of those questions, then chances are you should not release that word. Right? Don't do that, right? Because something's off, right? We're not following the protocol, right? They call that like an illegal word, right? Because it's not following the rules, right? But also, to me, when I'm either receiving an interpretation for one of my dreams, or I'm gonna give an interpretation that I feel like I received as I review it, um, I think, does it sound like Jesus? Does it look like Jesus? Does it feel like Jesus? And if it means that, it's like, okay, good to go. But if it doesn't, I'll leave that on the table. I'll walk away. I won't agree with it. Or, there's certain parts that, yeah, they do agree. Certain parts just sound right. And, I receive that. But the other, I'm kind of not really there yet. So we're not going to receive it. And that's another thing to understand, is that whenever someone is interpreting a dream for you, whether it's a God dream or a nightmare, is that you're just as powerful to say, no, I don't receive that. That doesn't bear witness with me. Goodbye. You know what I mean? You don't have to receive everything, right? Or you could say, you know what, I'm going to take it and kind of hold on to it for a little bit while I process it. And that's fine too. But I think that especially with nightmares, it's important that we do that, right? And some people just they don't give it any attention. They just don't even bother with it, nightmares. But here's the reason why I do believe that redeeming nightmares is important, and especially to put an end to it. And so I have my own testimony to share about my son with the nightmares. So 2020 season, summer into fall, he started having nightmares, and he had one recurring nightmare. One of them, he dreamt that I was killed, right? So I redeemed that sucker right away. And so he was terrified, of course, right? And so he was fine. But then he started having this other nightmare that kept repeating, which was like a black dog was biting him on the leg every time like he would walk, right? And so he was going through his own experience. So, through development and through education, and he was just kind of having this like these issues, right, with school. And so I'm like, oh, I see what's going on. So I redeemed that dream for him, and I'm like, I get it. So really, I let him know, what it is that as you are walking out your growth and your maturity, and as you're walking out your development, what you're learning at school and the new ways of learning, the enemy is going to try to distract you, right? He's going to try to terrify you and scare you to keep you away from your destiny and where you're walking into, which really, all the things that were being brought up about him was that dog, right? Was that dog biting. So I just let him know, like, what you're experiencing right now in your life is a distraction that's trying to keep you away from your destiny and the path that in life that God has for you. But here's the thing, that you are still walking, and that you terrify the devil every single time that you take a step and you decide to still go to school, to still do your work, to still listen to your teachers, right? And to still be dedicated. And so that helped him, and it broke. And so since that time, he has not had any more nightmares. He does not ask to sleep in a room anymore, because what we redeemed that nightmare, right? And so many people would have said, "Oh, well, it's not real," right? Don't ever do that, right? Don't try to make things just because they're scary unreal to our kids, because the experience, it's real. They really are having that dream, and it really is in some realm in the spirit trying to happen. So what do? We snatch that sucker up and we redeem it. We bring it under the blood of Christ, and we're like, boom, this is what God says about your life. Not what the enemy says, but this is what God says about your life. And this is what he's terrified about. And we're going to knock some gates down, okay? Like the word says, right? What does it say? I'm like, what does it say? Right? The gates of hell shall not prevail, right? The of hell shall not prevail against my church. Whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven. Whatever you loose on earth will be loose in heaven. So you have been given full authority to advance the kingdom, to move on with your life. And that is the authority that you take to bring everything into submission of your authority. Why? Because boom, I've got the badge. Jesus said go, and I'm going. All right. So the other thing is, Ray, my husband, he had a dream of death. He dreamed that there was a death warrant out for his brother, and he was pretty scared because there was a bunch of other dead people in that dream. And so we redeemed that sucker too. And a couple of weeks later, we found out that my brother-in-law actually, my husband dreamed that his brother had a death warrant out for him with a bunch of dead people in the dream. A couple of weeks later, we find out that he actually had a baby, and he had not told anybody. He had not told anybody that he was going to have a baby, or his girlfriend was pregnant, until the baby arrived very early. And So what happened is when my husband told me that dream 2 weeks earlier, I told him, no, you know what I really think is gonna happen? There's this major change coming to your brother's life that is going to give um, pretty much an end to his current lifestyle. And there is a massive drastic change where he's gonna have to enter into new life. Like he's gonna have to apprehend a new way of living. And I don't know why, that's just the way I interpreted it because that's what I got, right? 2 weeks later, uh, the baby came early, and to say the least, it has. He's doing well. The baby's doing great. Praise the Lord. Um, but his life changed drastically, right? His lifestyle went from being a bachelor to being a father of a kid who, was born early and who needed a lot of medical attention. And he's doing great now. But it did. That dream was really did happen. Had we interpreted that dream any other way? Had we actually decreed death the way that it showed up in that dream? Who knows what would have happened, right? But that's not what we do. We speak life. So there's in that situation. The other situation where I redeemed a dream for my brother. So my brother loves his job. My brother has given his life, like pretty much his job. And maybe I'm exaggerating, but my brother, he loves what he does, right? And so he's been there for many years. And he had a dream that some crazy stuff had happened at work and he had gotten fired. So he called me right away and he was like, "Oh my gosh, I had this dream and I think I'm gonna get fired." I'm like, "No, no, no, stop right there. So tell me your dream." So he tells me his dream and I tell him, "You know what? Actually, what I think is going to happen is that someone else is going to leave and that's going to make room for you and you're going to actually get promoted." And so I'm like, I honestly, that's what I believe. And so that's what I'm releasing, that you can expect a promotion coming your way. Um, and then that took about 4 months. It went like through the summer, maybe 6 months. And sure enough, he got promoted. And exactly like I interpreted what happened, like I felt the Lord was speaking on, happened. The old guy moved out of the way, things shifted, and now he became the boss. He got promoted. And so that's why I think it's important that we don't ignore those things just because they're ugly and they're a little hairy and they're just kind of scary. That we don't ignore them and we just let them go, but rather if we have them, that we redeem them and we ask the Lord, "What are you saying?" Right? We know that your plans are for us to have life and to have life more abundantly. So where is that abundant life in this dream, Lord? Can you speak to me? And He's so good and faithful to show you, and that you may share that and that you may release that. And like we said earlier, right, we have that angelic to carry out those words, because they match the will of God. And so finally, we reached our last slide. Guys, an hour and a half. So nighttime spiritual hygiene. I think that that's important that we do talk about this because it matters. It's what are our eyes and ears taking in, right? What are you watching? What are you reading? What are you listening to? When you before you go to bed, right? Or even, there's times where people like can watch an entire series like back to back and then they go dream about it. Oh my God. So what are you watching? What are you listening to? What is coming through you, right? It's been my experience that I can't watch an action movie or any emotionally charged movie really, or even news stories before bed because I will dream about it or my dreams will just be really wacky and like way off. So what we listen to also matters because and this is so crazy. And I just recently had done a study on frequency because I was like really bothered about something that someone said. And I'm like, I need to find out about the frequencies myself. So I just started studying on it. And oh my gosh, you guys, every like sounds have frequency, right? So what we listen to matters because that frequency is in there, and frequencies, listen, they have the ability to shift our focus, our attitudes. And so according to Healthline, there are several recognized types of brain waves, right? So each type is associated with a frequency range and a mental state. So listed like, so in order from the highest frequency to the lowest, there's 5 common types, right? So they are like gamma, which is a state of high concentration and problem solving. And then there's beta, which is an active mind or normal waking state. And there's alpha, which is a calm, restful mind. And then there's theta, it's a state of tiredness, daydreaming, or early sleep. And then finally, there's delta, which is a deep sleep or dreaming state. So it's believed that syncing our brain waves to certain frequencies might be able to induce various mental states. So it's important, what are we listening to, what type of music are we listening to, even throughout the day, or like what is our brain syncing up with, right? So pay attention to that, especially when you're nearing bedtime. And I started, like, when I was studying this, I wound up on this YouTube channel, and this guy has all kinds of different music, right? But like he puts on the description like when you should listen to it, when you shouldn't listen to it, or like what is in there and how the frequencies are and all that stuff. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I had no idea there was like just so much detail to frequency. So pay attention to what's coming through your eyes and what's coming through your ears if you're having difficulty sleeping or entering into REM, all that stuff. And finally, fasting. So, and not fasting in the sense that we're used to hearing it spiritually, but at what time do you have your last meal? Because the body prioritizes digestion, and it's just such a taxing task for our body. And I personally will just fast till the morning if it's just too late for me to eat anymore, because I know I won't sleep well, I won't sleep right. And I'm not going to sacrifice a good night's sleep just to eat. So, but that's my personal choice. I know some people don't have an option, right? That's just the only time that they get to eat. So I mean, that's fine, but just pay attention to the foods that you are eating, that they don't elevate your sugar, your cortisol, or anything like that way too high in the middle of the night, because that also affects our sleeping and our dreaming. So um, eating late does go against our circadian rhythm, because that's when our body is naturally winding down to rest and sleep. And when we add food to it, it's like adding another log of wood to a dying fire, right? It's going to fire back up, and you're likely not to sleep well, and or not to drift well into REM, when REM is a stage of sleep where we dream. And so sometimes we have induced nightmares because as our body is attempting to go into that REM stage, something else kicks in our digestion, right? So that's why we sometimes we have like pizza dreams that they call. And then finally, just a little word on medication. So I'm not a doctor. I don't know if you guys figured that out yet. But I'm not a doctor, guys, and I really can't give too much medical advice. But there is one thing I know because of my own personal experience, with medication. So that also affects the way that our mind thinks and our brain operates and all that stuff. But also, I know a lot of people take melatonin. So there was a time where I began taking melatonin because my sleep had been like thrown like really off, and while I was going to college, so like I was staying up late reading or studying or doing homework and stuff, so my sleep got really thrown off. So I started taking melatonin, and I had not put it together until recently, is that sometimes like I would have nightmares, like I just would have crazy nightmares. And like, what's going on? And but then recently, I started taking it. I had began taking it with drops like under my tongue, and man, it got real crazy. And I was like, "Whoa, what's going on?" So I started studying, and I realized that the melatonin was giving me nightmares. So, if any of you guys have take melatonin or give melatonin to your kids and they're experiencing this, I urge you to study this and to do actual the process of fixing your sleep schedule, or inducing your body into natural circadian rhythm of rest, um, so that you don't have to take the medication. You know what I mean? So you don't have to take the melatonin. What I had to do was actually start slowly going to sleep a little bit earlier, until like my body, my brain, everything kind of synced up and they got the message like, okay, we're winding down, we're going to bed. It took a little while. Probably melatonin would have done it a little easier, but it took a while. And there was studies with the melatonin that showed that it will eventually affect your circadian rhythm. It doesn't that if you take it once, it doesn't really help. But if you take it over time, it does help. But if you're experiencing nightmares, no thanks. Just go the natural route and just um, make yourself go to bed a little bit earlier and kind of start to train your body and your mind into that state of rest. Um, yeah. That's a good point that Anna just made. As for me, I've noticed that if I go to sleep when I'm upset with my husband, I struggle at night. So, do not let the sun go down on your anger. I think it says something like that, right? It's like, hey, make things right before you go to bed. But even though sometimes, and now I feel like, because I'm married too, like you make things right, you ask for forgiveness and you talk about it, but there's just still that thing like, oh my God, I can't believe this, or you're just thinking about it. But it's like, man, just release that thing to the Lord, let the Lord handle it, and say, well, you know what, there's enough things for today. Tomorrow will take care of itself. There's enough worries for tomorrow, right? But I mean, I've been there too, where it's like, oh my gosh, I'm tossing and turning. I'm like, how did he sleep? I don't know how he's sleeping. He's over there snoring. He shut his eye, and 5 seconds later, he's out, and I'm here thinking about it. I know, because I've been there. You know what I mean? But it gets complicated, right? But I'm like, I want his sleep. Like, let me lay some hands on him, see if he can just transfer over some of this like tiredness. Anyway, so yeah, that's the last thing there on medication, guys. It's like if you're taking medication and melatonin, take a look at what some of the side effects are, and if it's any way possible that you don't have to take it, or there's a natural remedy for it instead, I would go that route. So all that to say, thank you for joining me tonight, guys. We were on for an hour and 40 minutes talking about this subject, but I'm telling you guys, there's just so much that I kept back. Let me tell you guys, because some of you are visual, a lot of you I suspect are visual like I am. This right here is a visual of what Psalm 91 looks like. Check this out. Oh, let me push play. Watch again. See that tiger jumping at the little girl, and then he's like retained by that glass. He can't touch her. Nope, not gonna happen. She gets a little startled, but nothing happened. That's Psalm 91 right there. He is that wall. He is that barrier surrounding us all around, keeping all threats of the enemy away from us, right? So we have a little time to to interpret dreams. So um let's take a look. Who entered a dream? Let me close this. Stop sharing so y'all don't see the interpretation right away. Yeah, gonna sneak at it. All right, y'all. So we have the first dream. I want to say thank you guys so much for hanging out with me tonight. I love talking about this stuff. This is something I could like have a total conversation with somebody about, because it's just so much. It's like I think, and that's why my mentor is doing an entire 4 weeks on it on his page, because it's a lot. And so so many things come into play, like as you guys realize, like there was inner healing and deliverance, that there was uh the rebuilding of truth strongholds, there was the renewing of the mind, which is always, it's an ongoing process through our lives, right? There was like studying, research, and just teachings, and just so much that goes into an area, and especially when you are hungry for that breakthrough. And God is so good and so willing to bring us through, right? And he knows, like, man, she is hunting for some Revy. She is trying to get this revelation. Let's hook her up. God is so good, guys, because he has so many of the things that I came across, and I like that just came through my mind and stuff. And even in my dreams, it's like that's God's mercy, like showing me the way through. So, thank you guys so much for your awesome, wonderful comments. Let's get into these dream interpretations. So, if you just threw it on there, I didn't see it obviously because I was doing the teaching. But after I'm done here, if we still have some time, I can go and take a look at what else was added as I was speaking. So, the first dream here is from Abby. Abby Garcia. I don't know. You know what? Let me open my page where I can actually see the people on Facebook, because StreamYard just says Facebook user and doesn't actually give me a name. There you go. There you are, Abby. Oh, my screen fell asleep, so it's a little behind. So I know who is still on. Thank you so much, Diana. Thank you so much, Anna. Okay. This is your dream, Anna Abigail. It says, She titled it, You Have Choices. She had it on November 4th, 2022. And the dream goes like this: I'm a new owner of an ice cream shop. I was blown away by how beautiful this shop was. I looked around and could imagine all the ice cream variations and the options I had to make whatever I wanted. So here's what I got for you, Abby, on that. I got 1 Corinthians 9:20, where it says, where Paul says, I have become all things to all people, so that by all possible means I might save some. I might save some. So you have a very unique gift to serve others by shifting into whatever gear is necessary to meet the person that's in front of you where they're at. And so you are gentle and you carefully give what God has put in you to them in very palatable ways. And you have tasted and you have seen that the Lord is good. And it is from those experiences that you draw out the variety of knowledge and wisdom that you have to each individual person that comes to you, that comes your way. And I think that you handle that so well, you carry that so well, that God is giving you, opening up the opportunity for you to actually minister and talk to those people as they come into your life. So I bless you with that. I hope that that makes sense. And let's see what we got next. Aisha, she wrote, I had a dream where I heard time for action 3 times. So Aisha, I would say that is time for action. If there's a prophetic word or a venture that you've been putting off for the right time, the time is now. It's time to take that word or that thing and run with it. The earth rose up out of the water on the 3rd day, and Jesus resurrected on the 3rd day. And 3 means fullness and completion. So there's been a fullness and a completion of that waiting season where things have aligned, so where the door has opened now for you to take action on those things that you were waiting for the opportunity to start walking out. So I blessed you with that. Keep it if it makes sense, shelve it if it doesn't. Next we have Patricia Sanchez. She wrote, I had a dream with this person, a friend of mine. She was sitting in a chair. In front of her, there was a solid cement table, picnic type. There were several kids around from different nationalities. On her right side, there was a plant and a cement platter like a bush. The bush had different branches, but each branch was a different type of plant, and she knew it was about each one. She starts explaining to me about each brand, specific ways to read the leaves. As she does that, she had a notebook on her lap and she was writing. I saw 3 words. Each one was in a row under the other. And then I woke up. So, what I have for you on this dream, Patricia, is that I feel that this is about both of you and your friend. And I feel like there is a partnership that's going to happen between the two of you somewhere down the road to minister to children of different ethnic backgrounds and different nationalities. And I think that this is a communion that the Lord, this is a communion that you've been having with the Lord. And as you've been communing with the Lord, you're been picking up on identities of children who are beginning to know the Lord. And I'm not sure if this is literal children or if these is just people that are children in spirit. You know what I mean? Like they're new, to the kingdom, right? So, but you'll be able to assist in the shaping of their identity and in making a difference in their lives and destinies. But this is also a dream that I feel like it's like there's another facet to it, right? And I feel like the other facet to it is the leading of Holy Spirit, where in this dream, your friend is also a representation of the Holy Spirit, where she is showing you and guiding you the way to navigate this space, right? The way to identify the identities that each person, each child carries, and that you may be able to shape and mold their destiny as you lead them in the way that they should go. So I hope that that makes sense to you, Patricia. Keep it if it does, shelve whatever doesn't, or shelve it if it doesn't. And then finally, oh no, not finally, I have 2 more. I have here Diana Cafiero. Okay, so Diana's dream. My husband and I were in a shopping mall parking lot. We were with another woman, not sure who. We just finished getting stuff to go on a trip to Hawaii. Someone gifted us tickets to go. We said it was going to be a 14-hour flight. Next thing you know, we were on this huge plane. There were so many people and seats that I was close to my husband, but not directly next to him. We went over lots of bumpy terrain on the ground as we headed to the airport to take off. The plane went under an overpass and stopped on a baseball field. We knew we had a break to go use the bathroom, so we were going to get off and do that. About to head to get off, my husband picked up a questionnaire off his seat and asked the pilot if we had to fill out 1 through 6. And he said, no, only 5 and 6. Then I woke up. So I don't have everything on this dream because it has numbers. Numbers are a little difficult for me still right now. It's one thing I'm still learning. So I feel like this is a good dream for Andrew. Where you at, Andrew? But you know what? I do have a little something on it. So this is what I was picking up on with this dream is that there is a time of rest and recreation that's coming to you guys that has been long overdue. I really sense that part. Like this is a rest and recreation that you guys need. It's been a long time coming and it's coming, right? It's been long overdue, and I feel like the bumpy stuff and the testing times that have passed, you may have had experience with things, bumpy things in the past or little rough things in the past, but I feel like those are in the past. Those have passed, and you're entering into a season of favor with God and man. So I bless you with that, Diana, and I hope that makes sense. Keep it if it does, shove it if it doesn't. All right, there we go. Now we have Princesa Palmer. I'm going to take a sip of my water because I feel like my throat is drying up. Mm. I feel like this mic picks up everything and I hate the sound of swallowing. All right, so Princesa Palmer. I have an old dream. I'm standing in an old library, but like the kind that are in old castle like home, standing next to a well. It was stone and out of place, and a warm fireplace also made of stone. I'm wearing a royal blue velvet dress. Out of nowhere, a mob of people run in and began chasing me. I find my way outside to escape them and end up in an old garden. It's nighttime. Everything is in black and white. There in the garden through there in the garden though, my uncle who's been deceased for a very long time is there. He has the most gentle and kind smile. He turns to pick up something from behind him. And when he turns back around, there is a beautiful sky blue ornament in his hands. He gives it to me and leaves. I wake up after that. This is an awesome dream, guys. Like, the part where she says like she went out in the garden, right? And everything was black and white. But then she shares that he gave her a beautiful sky blue ornament. So just imagine everything in the room was black and white right now, and all that was in color was that ornament. Like, oh my gosh, right? So this is significance to that. So what I'm feeling is that you are a deep well of knowledge, Princesa, and the Lord overflows from you, and with so much wisdom, you've made the Lord your refuge and have understood so well the comfort of his nearness. Everything that life or the enemy have thrown at you, the Lord has turned around for your good. Also, I feel that the second part of that dream is about an inheritance that has been forgotten or left on the shelf or has been tucked away. And that is coming from the side of the family that your uncle is from. Maybe it's something he didn't get to finish, and that the Lord is offering you the opportunity to pick up and I feel like it's a way for you to adorn yourself with it. It's a way that it's gonna, as you walk in it, you're gonna bring obviously glory to Him, but it's also fits you and it suits you well. And I'm sensing that it's revelation. I would part. I feel like that's something that partners well with the gifts that you have, which is wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. And also, I'm sensing that you belong in the company and in the same rooms as kings and queens with the power and authority to govern in your area of influence. And there is so much more that God wants to show you. And so the revelation that you need to be able to stay in these rooms where you have been given favor is going to come through you as you begin to pick up these things that have been passed down, these blessings that have been passed down to you generationally. So I bless you with that. I hope that makes sense. Keep it if it does, shove it if it doesn't. And so that's all I have for tonight, you guys. I had an amazing time. I really enjoyed being with you guys and sharing with you guys on the subject. Please share this with a friend. Whatever, any questions you might have, leave them in the comments. I'll be checking those out later and answering those for you guys. Once again, thank you guys so much. Love you. God bless you. Good night.